Okay, so here's our video on solving quadratics by factoring. Now there's many ways we can solve quadratics. We can use the quadratic formula, which we'll talk about in the next video. But we can also factor. So let's have a quadratic equation up here. And you know it's quadratic because it has the highest exponent is 2. And here we have it in standard form where the exponents are descending. So the first thing we want to do is set to 0. Now we have this. Now it's important to know, if you remember, what A, B, and C are. So right here we have A, we have B, and we have C. So the A is 1, the B is 6, and the C is 8. Now we know, just by looking at this quadratic, if we want to review, that this is a positive quadratic. And the x is squared, not the y. So we know that this is positive. It'll look something like this. Generally, it's going to be facing upward. Now to do this, to solve quadratics by factoring, you need to remember FOIL. So in FOIL we had first, outside, inside, last. This is what it would look like at the end. We'll have these two binomials with x leading it, and it's either going to be minus or plus. Now, by looking at the last equation, we can see we only have plus signs, so it's all positive. So we know we're going to have an x plus something and another x plus something. So what we need to do now is you look at the equation. Let's write the equation again. So x squared plus 6x plus 8 equals 0. We're looking for, at B and C, we want to know what two numbers sum to B. So what two numbers sum to B, and those same two numbers, when you multiply them, you'll get the product of 8. So for example, I know that 4 plus 2 equals 6, and 4 times 2 equals 8. So let's see if that works. So here's the two numbers, and they have to be the same numbers. 4 plus 2 is 6, and 4 times 2 is 8. So again, you want to know what two numbers sum to B and get the product of C. Right? So now we can make our binomial here. So x plus 4, and we can do x plus 2. Now if this is correct, if it's x plus 4, x plus 2, we should get the original quadratic equation. So again, with FOIL, we do first times first, and we get x squared. Right? We do outside times outside, we get 2x. Then we do the inside times the inside, we get 4x. And then the last times last, and we get 8. So putting this together, we have x squared, combining like terms, 6x plus 8. We got the original equation right here, x squared plus 6x plus 8. So we know now that the binomials are x plus 4 and x plus 2. Okay, so what do we do with that? We're going to set them both to 0. So we have x plus 2, or x plus 4, same thing. Look at x plus 4 first. So x plus 4 equals 0 and x plus 2 equals 0. So we can see that negative 2 plus 2 is 0. So our first answer would be negative 2. And negative 4 plus 4 is 0. So this is our solution, negative 2, negative 4. These are our roots, which we talked about in the last video, the roots. Okay, so let's review here. So what two numbers sum to B? We said it was 4 and 2. But those same two numbers have to give us a product of 8. So we had x plus 4, and we had x plus 2. And when we did FOIL, we got that number, that equation. So again, remember the rule. What two numbers sum to the B number, and those same two numbers have to get the product of the C number. So keep that in mind. Okay, so here it is on the graph. Remember, we had negative 4 and negative 2. These were our roots, right there. And now we want to find the axis of symmetry. right? It's what splits the parabola in half. And once we find the axis of symmetry, we can find the vertex. And the vertex is where the parabola crosses the axis of symmetry. So in the parabola, we can see that as it goes up or down, it's going to descend, reach its apex, its highest point or lowest point in this case, and then it's going to ascend. So the vertex is where it crosses the axis of symmetry. So again, we have our roots. Now we're going to find the axis of symmetry. Just to review how we got the roots, remember we had the equation, we had x plus 4, and we had x plus 2. And we want to set them both to 0. And we know that negative 4 plus 4 is 0, and negative 2 plus 2 is 0. So the roots are negative 4 and negative 2. Right here, these are the roots. To get the axis of symmetry, you just add the roots together, which you get negative 6, and divide by 2. And you'll get the axis of symmetry is negative 3, right in the middle, as you can see on the graph. Now, negative 3 is the axis of symmetry. To get the vertex, we're going to take negative 3 and plug it into the original equation. Okay, so take negative 3 and plug it into the original equation. Okay, and if we plug it in, remember to put parentheses around a negative when you're doing exponents. If you didn't have the parentheses around it, a negative 3 squared would be a negative 9, because you're saying 3 squared, which is 9, and then putting the negative to it. So just remember, put parentheses around it, and you'll get 9. 6 times negative 3 is 18, plus 8. So here is the vertex, negative 1. So let's look back at the graph. That's where the vertex is. That's where the line crosses the axis of symmetry. Okay, let's see if we can do another one. What if we had, I'll write one here, y equals x squared plus 6x equals 7. How would you do that? You should pause the tape and see if you can do this. Now keep in mind, quadratic equations should be in standard form. So pause the tape, see if you can solve that. First thing we should keep in mind is we want to set it to 0. But the 7 is in the way here, so we have a 7 here, let's minus it out. So we would have x squared plus 6x minus 7. That's our first step. What's the second step? Well, we want to find, again, two numbers that will sum to b, and at the same time, those two numbers, when multiplied, will give us a product of negative 7. So see if you can figure that out. Okay, so let's look at this. We know that if we need to get a product of negative 7, we also have to get a sum of 6. So the only numbers we can use is either negative 7 or a positive 7. So negative 7 times 1 gives us negative 7. That's true. But a negative 7 plus 1 will give us a negative 6. So we don't want to use a negative 7. We should start with x plus 7 and x minus 1, because now a 7, positive 7 times negative 1 will give us negative 7, but a positive 7 plus negative 1 will give us a 6. So let's try now. Right over here we'll say, see if this works, x plus 7 is one binomial, and x minus 1 is the other binomial. Doing FOIL here, we have x squared. Remember, we did first times first, outside times outside. We have a negative x, we can just say negative x. It's negative 1x, but we can just say negative x. Then we do the inside times the inside. I'm going to get plus 7x. And we're going to do the last times the last, and we'll get negative 7. Combine like terms here, and we're going to have our original equation. So we know that the answer, our two binomials, are x plus 7 and x minus 1. Now to get the roots, negative 7 plus 7 is 0. So one of our answers is going to be negative 7. And 1 minus 1 equals 0, so the other answer would be 1. Here's our roots, -7 and -1. And now we're just looking for the axis of symmetry, which cuts the parabola in half. And to do that, we're going to take -7 plus 1 and divide it by 2. And you'll get the axis of symmetry. Right? And so the axis of symmetry is -3. Bring that over. Because we have -6 divided by 2, and we'll get -3. Now, how do we get the vertex? We plug in -3 into the original equation. So in the original equation, bring this up here, we're going to have -3 in parentheses squared plus 6 times -3 minus 7. That was because the original equation, again, I'll write it up here, was x squared plus 6x minus 7. That was the original equation. Okay, so we're going to have 9 plus -18 minus 7, and we'll get our vertex. Okay, so let's bring this up. I'll erase this over here. So now we're going to have a -9 minus 7. All right, and remember, when we have negatives here, we're going to keep change. We have -9 plus -7, and our vertex will be -16. All right, so there's our vertex, where the parabola crosses the axis of symmetry, where it goes from descending to ascending. Okay, so we've talked about how to get the vertex, the roots, the axis of symmetry. On our next video, we'll look at negatives. What if we had a negative x? And we'll also look at the quadratic formula to solve quadratics.